This is AP Style Boot Camp. Okay, so the main thing about quotes is they're always their own paragraph. Always their own paragraph. Nothing bothers me more than when a quote is in the middle. I really love to eat at Chipotle. Comma. Always a comma. After, even if it's a sentence, always a comma. And then end of quote. And then always said after their name. Always. And I know sometimes you're going to be tempted to be like, joked, Nielsen, or Nielsen joked, or Nielsen chuckled. No. It's like said is such a universally known and used thing that we just use it no matter what. Yeah.
What if it's like an exclamation after this?
Yeah, there's gonna be those instances. Like one time I wrote an article and the guy was literally joking. Like what he said wasn't true. It was meant to be a joke. So I asked him why. It was a basketball player at BYU, and I asked him why he deleted his Twitter account, and he was like, "Well, it's because people were being mean to me." And I was like, "Did it affect you at all?" And he said, "Oh yeah, it made me cry a couple of times in like the middle of a press conference," which wasn't true. And then he was like, "Oh, I'm just kidding. They didn't make me cry." So in that case, it's like, "Hey everybody, he said this, but he didn't actually cry." So that's the only case. Is if the factual reality of what they're saying needs to have they exclaimed or whatever, then yeah, you can put that. And then period after said, always, go back into your quote. I sometimes drive to Sandy and back to Provo. So this is really important. I know you guys have probably read articles and seen the parentheses. You're like, why do I use that? That's for clarification, and the parentheses is supposed to let people know that like the journalist is saying this, right? So I didn't actually say in my quote back to Provo, but in order to clarify, because you don't know if it's like back to Springville or back to Orem, back to Provo in parentheses so that people know that you're saying it, not the person. Just for a readable. Does that self-explanatory?
It's related to quotes. When you do an ellipsis showing that,
yeah.
If you just want to take out a little fragment and jump to the next, how does it look spacing-wise?
So pretend this isn't here.
Okay.
You just put a space, and then it would be, and then another space.
And then another space, and then you start.
And then you start saying
whatever. Okay.
But let me read you what the AP Style book says about ellipses. The same care that is used to ensure that quotes are accurate should also be used to ensure that quotes are not taken out of context. That's like basic journalism, so I'm sure you guys know that. We do not alter quotes, this is a big thing. We do not alter quotes even to correct grammatical errors or word usage. If a quotation is flawed because of grammar or lack of clarity, the writer must be able to paraphrase in a way that is completely true to the original quote. So, let's say...
So if someone speaks in passive voice, you're supposed to paraphrase?
Yeah. If it's a really, really crummy quote, what I would say is just chuck the whole thing in paragraph or paraphrase.
But if it's like an awesome quote, though, and you want it.
Well, and that's true. So one time I wrote an article about a homeless guy, and the way he talked kind of brought emphasis to the article. Right. So you want to keep how he would talk. But I mean, if it's like the governor of Utah, and he says, "I ain't voting for Mitt Romney," you probably don't want to say, he said, "I ain't voting for Mitt Romney." You probably want to say, the governor does not want to vote for Mitt Romney. So say sometimes I like to caravan or like to jaunt to Sandy. That sounds pretty dumb. It's like, what? Who says that? So in that case, you'd probably just be like, the second part of the quote, whatever, I'll just paraphrase. Does that make sense? Anyway, back to ellipses. Ellipses should be used rarely. Does anybody particularly like ellipses in here? I knew there's culprits. If you can avoid it, do it. It's like an ellipses is like construction where you're like, "Hey Siri, tell me where I can go to avoid this construction." But sometimes, no matter what is going on, you have to drive through construction. So if you have to use ellipses, go for it. But just know that don't always go to ellipses like air and water. Okay.
I don't know when this would ever be needed, but like sometimes you have to like change tenses and to use brackets. Is that like never happens in?
I don't usually use it, and
I can't think of when it would happen, but I'm just confused.
But you never know. So yeah.
That's okay to like do the
Yeah.
brackets and change tenses.
Yeah.
It's just one, right?
Yeah, it's just one.
And if it ends the sentence, is it three next to each other?
I know. Trust me, the Steve Jobs in me hates that. It's just like, I can't. But yeah, it's just the one, and within a quote. Does that make sense? So, but I mean, rarely should you use a quote within a quote. But, yeah. Okay, is that all for quotes? Quotes is a big one. Datelines. This is important because some people have put them and some people haven't. A dateline tells the reader where the reporter obtained the basic information for their story. This is important. We do not use datelines unless we go get our information from somewhere out of Utah, Emily. Does that make sense? So if you're doing a court story in Salt Lake City, you have to put Salt Lake City so that people know that's where you were. Otherwise, if you're in Orem, you don't have to worry about it. If you're in Sandy, I wouldn't say you have to worry about it. If you're in Salt Lake, or if you're in St. George, or if you're somewhere significantly far away, you're going to want to put a dateline. Does everybody know what a dateline is? I probably should have clarified that. This is before the story. Do any of you read the New York Times? They do it a lot. And then it's like before the story. So yeah, that's the only time we use datelines. So you never have to put, and rarely do we use it for the universe. Rarely. Just because the universe usually is only about things going on.
And you don't have to put Utah if it's within the state, right?
Yeah. And then they changed it, so now if it is out of state, you have to put the whole name of the state. So
Even
let's say if
it's-
it was,
oh.
so it used to be Las Vegas, Thomas. So yeah, if you're out of state, you used to have to put that, but now you have to write out Nevada. So does that make sense?
Even with the,
Only the dateline, right?
Yeah, but only in the dateline.
Oh.
Not a you guys know. Titles. Only capitalize formal titles when they precede an individual's name. Does anybody know what precede means? Before. So like President Barack Obama, right? You'd always capitalize president. But if it's like Katie Nielsen, officer of the Chipotle Commission, you never like. Jenna always says if the person's title is more important than their name, you're going to want to put it before their name. If their name is the most important thing of their whole title, then you're going to put the title after. Does that make sense? So like, my name is probably more important than the fact that I'm a BYU student. So you're always going to put BYU student after. Does that make sense? Whereas it's pretty important that Barack Obama is the president of the United States, so we're going to put president before his name. 1 through 9, please write them out.
They don't write up 10?
No. That is, yes, it's very weird.
I know.
AP is very weird.
So what's it? If you're saying like he's 11 years old, and then 3 years, and then like you go comma 3 years after, do you write 3?
Yep. Yep, you
Okay,
write 3.
just making sure.
Yep. And then 10 through whatever number you can possibly come up with, you always write out.
Can you explain the years old thing again?
Yeah, so say somebody's 11,
Yeah.
but his sister is 3. That's what you
And then years old, is that hyphenated?
I think so, yeah.
Age though,
Yeah, age is different.
see, that's the only thing that,
It's,
AP is frustrating, is like there's exceptions to everything.
Yeah.
Teacher gets that. So like with ages though, if you're saying 3-year-old, it's a number. Or dimensions, you say 3 feet by 5 feet, it's gonna be a number. You say percentages, it's gonna be a number. But when you're referring to an amount of something, or even like money, same thing with money, it's $1. Like $3 is the number 3.
yeah.
So,
AP is really, really screwy.
How about times of day?
You're always gonna put the number. So this happened at, and then you always put that.
Okay.
So yeah. Yeah, numbers. Also, yeah, so 10 through whatever number, even if it's million, bajillion, gazillion, quadrillion, you have to write down. Okay.
Use commas, right?
Yeah. Use commas. Okay, organization. Paragraphs are short and concise. If your paragraph is 3 sentences, that's okay. This is my favorite sentence ever. MLA format is dead. Get it out of your head. Nobody likes MLA. Just basically, I don't know, I sometimes tell you guys to read, but here's your paragraph, space, paragraph, space. I usually don't indent. Do we, Professor Boyle? Sometimes the designers will indent, but I never indent, ever.
Like for a long one?
Like here.
I do a tab, it's a tab usually.
Yeah, but
they'll format it for, but when I read your stuff, I like to see, so I know that it's in your paragraph.
so yeah, I guess that's personal preference, but anyway, so yeah, MLA format is dead. Don't ever write another, well, I guess you guys are PR majors, so I guess, but anyway. So any questions there? And then, like I said, quotes are always there, all in paragraph. Always, 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 always. You should never have a quote inside a paragraph. Okay.
One question about that, sorry.
Yes.
If you're saying something to lead into like a quote though, it should probably be like if there's like a short sentence before.
Yeah, if you have to set up what's happening. Preferably you would set it up in the previous paragraph, but if you have to use a sentence to set something up, yeah, you can do that. And usually it's followed by...
Like if you did something, it just like, you said a paragraph and then you kind of switched and transition, like,
Yeah.
he doesn't agree with this, it'd be weird to just go.
Yeah, so yeah, that would be an exception where you would use the quote. Oh, okay. Nouns and verbs. A noun names a person, place, thing, or idea. Please remember this. A verb, action from the subject. From the subject. This is important, and I'll tell you why next. Active voice versus passive voice. Did any of you remember learning about active voice and passive voice? You should. Okay. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Everybody pay attention. If you ever learn anything at BYU, comms, this should be it. Okay. Marilyn mailed the letter. Who's the subject here?
Maryland.
What did she do?
Mailed.
Perfect. So, here we have a subject which is very clear, and we have it very clear what she's doing. Now, the letter was mailed by Marilyn. Who's the subject here?
The letter.
The letter. What is the letter doing?
Mailed.
Exactly. It's being mailed. Okay, and then tell me what this dastardly thing is. Can anybody?
Passive voice.
Well, what's this called in English language? A preposition. So this is the difference between active voice and passive voice. Passive voice is making your subject obscure, right? Because here, the person who's reading your article knows exactly who Marilyn is and what she's doing. Here, you've suddenly made the letter your subject, and so now it's like, well, is Marilyn the subject, or is the letter here important? Who's important, the letter or Marilyn? Well, in my case, Marilyn is more important than the letter, right? So, that's a passive voice. The man must have eaten 5 hamburgers. Who's the man?
Subject.
Or who's the subject? The man. What is he doing? Okay. Does anybody know something here? The 5! Haha! That's... Hello? Just write that out. Anyway, I think I'll ask. So yeah, okay. 5 hamburgers must have been eaten by the man. Now, tell me who that subject is. That's obscure. And also, let's talk about this little punk again, right? So now suddenly your subject is within the preposition, and it's becoming a little bit like what's going on. So this is kind of important for your readers because you don't want your readers to get lost in who's important here, because the man is the most important, but suddenly we've made the hamburgers our subject. Does this make sense? So, always, 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 if you can, write an active voice, just so that your subject stays clear for your readers. Does that make sense? With my desk, I stress art because art seems to be the afterthought. this is very true. Nobody likes someone who's good looking, but has a career person. No matter how pretty your article is or how wonderful it is, make sure that your content, make sure you have an engine under that hood, right? Because, I mean, the New York Times is boring, yes, but I can always count on the fact that their content is good. Whereas some other publications, I'm like, well, this is crummy content. I don't really care. Make it specific. Many of you have ever heard of this book. It's a really awesome book. It's about writing nonfiction. And it's by this guy who's like a writer, and he moved to France, and he's really cool. So, he talks about this. Let me talk about an analogy. It's almost dinner time, so food's on my mind. That is written in here. Well prepared, either grilled salmon or a leg of lamb can make for a delicious main dish, but the chef who serves both on the same plate will likely win few culinary awards. Both are foods. Still, they have little else in common. Two slices of a story on the same broad topic can clash in the same way. It is better to report and present one well than to cram both uninvitingly into the same space. It'll ruin the reader's appetite. So, say you have your subject, and there are different aspects about this person. I'm doing a profile example. So, she has 5 kids. She's a journalist. She got in a plane crash. She, got an award. So, okay, bear with me. When you have these aspects of a person or a story, it's better, in my mind, to focus on one. So are you wanting to talk about how she has 5 kids as your main thing, and then off of that talk about the plane crash and how she got an award? Or do you want to talk about her award first, and then how, that plays into journalism and the plane crash? Does that make sense? So rather than writing a story that's like, that makes all of these 5 things the main, 4 things the main thing, you want to pick something specific about them, and then go from there. Does that make sense? So don't try to cram so much stuff in one story as the main dish. Dig deeper. Spend time with your stories, please. I can't emphasize that enough. If you need, one person came and talked to me today about doing their final story. Have you guys talked about those at all?
We're trying next week.
Yeah. He's already started spending time with the person that he's doing his article on because he wants to get the best he can out of this guy. That is, I know you're all PR majors, but that is just that is journalism at its essence, all right? So anyway, spend time with your stories, spend time with your subjects, spend time finding out what's really going on, spend time figuring out why they feel this way and why this is important and what's going on. I can't emphasize that enough. So, I think that's, okay. Lastly, you're all so great. Take yourself to Chipotle, you deserve it. But if you go, let me know because I really want to go.
In carpool.
Yeah.